Well, another live-action remake. Here we go. Hi everybody, Anthony here from Awesome Anthony Productions, and today I'm going to give you my review of the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. But before we get started, please leave a like, and at the end of the video, if you think I've earned it, please subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss any of my new reviews. Now let's get into it. When I first heard that How to Train Your Dragon, one of my favorite movies of all time, was getting a remake, I had a pit in my stomach. My biggest fear, that this was going to get the Disney treatment, changing everything and trying to make sure it's not problematic. But then I remembered, this one wasn't going to be done by the mouse. And damn if that's not the biggest compliment I could have given it, because honestly, this movie sticks very close to the original story, and it's for the better. For starters, let's talk about the talent that came back for this reimagining here. DreamWorks went back to one of the original directors, Dean DeBlois, to have him helm this, and that was just a hell of a smart move. The translation from animation to live action, though it does lose some of that cartoonish whimsy and expressiveness, is still masterfully done. This really feels like the Isle of Berk has come to life on the big screen. And between the island, the home, the Vikings that fill the island and their costumes, it just feels so authentic and true to the original. Even the different species of dragon themselves, who, outside of Toothless, were given much more realistic reptile designs, are still very true to the original. You know immediately that you're looking at a deadly natter, a hideous zippleback, a gruesome gronkel, a monstrous nightmare, a terrible terror.
It's like the size of my...
And of course, we got the larger-than-life Scotsman himself, Gerard Butler, coming back to reprise his role as Stoic the Vask on screen in a 92-pound costume, with a massive beard to boot. But I can't forget the best ingredient that ties this all together. John Powell coming back 15 years after the original to reimagine the score. That original soundtrack is absolutely iconic, and Powell completely understood the assignment with this, keeping the bombastic horns and the beautiful strings, while finding both familiar and new ways to weave those epic motifs throughout the score here. Those three factors alone make this better than most remakes, and when you combine it with the fact that there's really only a few changes or new additions here, it really works. It feels more like How to Train Your Dragon the Extended Edition than a complete bastardization like so many Disney remakes have. I've got to hand it to the cast too. I wasn't completely sold when I saw all the announcements, but I think they nailed it. Mason Thames is a fantastic actor. I said that back in 2022 when I saw The Black Phone.
Mason Thames is an incredibly talented young actor, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in more projects.
And he does a great job bringing Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III to life here. He's not quite as over-the-top goofy as Jay Baruchel's voice, but he's still a very believable outcast and brings so much emotion, humor, and dramatic weight to the role of Hiccup here. And that's even more true when he's hanging out with Toothless. From the behind-the-scenes posts I've seen, they had him working with like a life-size puppet or a figure most of the time, which is a hell of a lot better than a tennis ball or nothing. But even then, I was pleasantly surprised by just how authentic and believable he is when he's interacting with Toothless on the big screen. There's real weight there, and Thames is so good, you never feel like you're watching an actor interacting with a CGI character. It just feels like Hiccup and Toothless. There's also plenty of real weight in a lot of the scenes between him and Butler Stoic. They nailed the dynamic of hard-headed father that barely listens to his son, and a son that is just so desperate to get through to his dad even a little bit. And when things get dark and dramatic between them, that shit gets heavy.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
I was tearing up at a certain pivotal point in the story. He also has great chemistry with Nico Parker's Astrid, and their romantic flight here, though not as visually striking as the original movie, is still very beautiful in its own right.
What are you gonna do about it?
Probably something stupid.
Well, you've already done that.
It's something crazy.
Parker herself I was a little torn on. I could care less about race swaps most of the time, but knowing that she was a Viking, it felt a little weird until they explained it. Yeah, the movie actually takes a moment to explain why the Isle of Berk is so diverse in this one, and it works and made a ton of sense, so I appreciate that.
We're all descendants of the finest dragon fighters from everywhere the Vikings ever traveled.
At the end of the day, it's a mythical past with Vikings fighting dragons, so the race of the characters doesn't really matter all that much, but it was a nice touch that they added that in there. Anyway, back to Nico Parker. She's a little one note for the first half of the movie here, just jealous of Hiccup and walking around with exactly one expression, a scowl, and they added this extra chip on her shoulder where she gives Hiccup shit for being the son of a chief that's very privileged. We definitely could have done without that.
In case you forgot, our parents' war is about to become ours. Figure out which side you're on.
But once her character gets to her softer side, I thought she did a great job with that, and like I said, her and Mason Thames have amazing chemistry. She even gets a few more chances to be a badass in the third act instead of taking a back seat, which was also cool to see. Nick Frost as Gobber brings out the softer side of that character very well, and though I miss Craig Ferguson's iconic voice, I thought he was a great replacement, playing very well off the cast and having some genuinely heartfelt moments with Stoic or Hiccup. The rest of the Viking teens, like Julian Denniston's Fish Legs, Bronwyn James's and Harry Travolta Baldwin's Rough Nut and Tough Nut and Gabriel Howell's Snotlout were good enough and fulfill their support roles with enough physical comedy and one-liners, though they don't come even close to being as iconic as their original animated versions. And also, would it have been so hard to cast actual twins as Rough and Tough? The actors were great, but they look nothing alike, although that did lead to one joke that made me laugh. Moving on, I've got two more things to mention before I wrap up the review. Number one, the action and visual effects. As good as this movie was, surprisingly so, there's just something that inevitably gets lost when you go from animation to live action. And that something here was a lot of color and expressiveness, especially when it comes to the dragons. But even with that being said, the special effects and CGI are very polished here. They're weighty, they're very effective, especially on Toothless and during the flight scenes, aside from a few close-up shots on the actors that were very obviously blue-screened. I was honestly impressed that this never dipped into the uncanny valley, especially after the monstrosities that were the dwarfs in Snow White and the alien characters in Lilo and Stitch. Monstrosity! And number two, the emotion. Regardless of whatever personality was lost in this jump to live action, this film has just as much emotion as the original. Toothless and Hiccup's developing friendship is just a joy to watch in live action. The drama between Hiccup and Stoic is just magnified by the actors' great performances, and anytime our characters are in peril, you really feel it. Even with knowing exactly what would happen with the story, Victoria and I were still in tears several times, especially at a certain point in the climax until the very ending. If you know, you know. But even with all my praise and how impressed I was by this film, I guess if I had one complaint, it's just that it didn't need to exist. The original is a modern classic, one of DreamWorks Animation's best, and one of my top 10 films of all time. This felt like it was born out of corporate synergy. Universal saw all the hype and excitement building for the Isle of Berk at their new Epic Universe park, and commissioned a live-action remake to not only jump on that hype, but to capitalize on the remake trend. But the key difference here, it was made with respect to the original. Not to purposely change a bunch of things in the story to please a modern audience that isn't even gonna show up. Disney. This is a love letter to the original series that was made with reverence and care by one of the original directors behind it, and I will always be thankful for that. And for once, I'm excited to see a sequel to a live-action remake. Go see it on the big screen, in 3D, IMAX, Dolby, whatever premium experience you can. I promise you it is worth it for the flight scenes alone. Wow, I was saying that exact same thing 15 years ago when the original came out. And that's my review of How to Train Your Dragon. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this review, you know exactly what to do. Please leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss any of my new reviews. While you're at it, you can scroll down the description below, find the links to my socials, leave a comment, let me know if you saw this and what you thought. And if you want more of my content, you can click or tap on these cards right here. I'll take you to my review of Predator, Killer of Killers, or just over to my channel where you can check out the rest of my reviews. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time for my review of 28 Years Later.